So we can go around and we can say something. I don't know what he did. We can say like 2 of our observations, and then we can each say 2 questions. Okay. 2 questions? Yeah, pick 2 questions.
We might as well just do 3 questions so we get more.
Yeah, we'll do all 3 questions, but we'll
go like 1, 1, 1.
Yeah, and pick 2 observations.
Okay.
So we'll start with you.
Oh, we're starting with
Yeah, we're starting with you.
Are we recording?
Yeah, we're recording.
I don't know what I want to do.
Me too.
Are we starting?
Yeah,
we've been
starting me. Sorry.
forever.
Okay. So, on page 152, she says, "Good. I don't want to talk to her either. I'm being petty as hell and don't even care." And like, I can totally relate because like, I'm really stubborn, and when I get irritated with my mom, I'm just like super petty about it, and then I'm like, I don't care. I just stop. And then I wrote, even though Star and I live very different lives, we're still both teenage girls.
I'll go next. So there's one quote when it's like, I don't remember who said this. I believe it was Star's father, but he goes, "A thug. Why he assume that though? What? By looking at Khalil? Explain that, detective." So it's all just talking about how he just assumed he was a thug because of the color of his skin. And I put, this quote defines the racism and stereotypes within the story. And I think that this may have been the first quote to like blatantly address the situation and just flat out say the problem and how it was likely because of racism. And I feel like they said it a lot later than after Khalil was shot, so they could have been in denial that like someone was, that like it happened to them, even though they had talked about like what they should do if it ever happened. I just thought it was really interesting.
So a quote for mine was, "Take your dinner to the den and sit on the floor. Bullets don't know where they're supposed to go." And my question is, if like how calm they're being about the situation should be like okay, because like things should change at this point, because the Carter family and so many other families hear gunshots on a daily basis that it just becomes a routine, just like a part of their daily routine. They now ignore the gunshots and somehow seem calmer, accepting the shots being fired as they should be considered acceptable. Well, I don't know, like things need to change. Like it shouldn't be normal for them to just like hear gunshots every day.
Okay, so when they were talking about the march, I think that Sky's gonna join the march to like defend Khalil instead of like staying in the dark about it.
My quote is, sometimes the shit that happens, or sometimes the shit just happens, and one day you realize there's a leader among you and your friends, and it's not you. And I said, I predict that eventually Star will become her own leader, or even the group's leader. And I think that right now she just wants to hide behind the white girls because she would blend in more. And that's like a huge message like coming from the book, that like she just wants to blend in. And like she talks about how the different ways she has to walk or dress or talk. And when she's at school, she doesn't want to stand out as ghetto, or else like she said that she didn't want to punch a girl because she didn't want to be the angry black girl. And I think that eventually Star will stand up and not hide from who she is. Just like you can tell that she's getting more confident.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily think that she's changing who she is at Williamson. She's just choosing the parts of herself that she wants to show.
Yeah.
But I feel like eventually she's just gonna merge it. She's just gonna become one.
Yeah, there's also one part where she's like, at Williamson where I'm not normal Star, so she admits that she's putting on an act because if she doesn't feel accepted enough there to act herself. Okay, so you can go.
Okay, so my quote's like super long, so I'm not gonna read it all, but it's like, Daddy claims the Hogwarts houses are really gangs. They have their own colors, their own hideouts, they're always riding for each other like gangs. And then it's like the Death Eaters have matching tattoos, Voldemort, they won't say names, like giving him a street name. Then it's like, that's some gangbanging shit right there. And I thought that was really cool, and it like never even occurred to me to think of it that way. And so like I don't think J.K. Rowling like meant to make that connection, but like honestly now that it's been made in my head, it's never gonna be unmade. But I also really like how the author is taking a really popular like
series.
modern culture series and like putting connections to it and like whatever the word is in the book, because it makes you feel like you understand it and like you feel more connected to the characters if you've read the series or like watched it, because you feel like I understand what they're talking about. I feel like I understand more about the book.
Okay, so my next quote.
I cannot come out yet.
My next quote was when Miss Gomez was questioning Star when she went to the station, and she said, "Now, do you know if Khalil sold narcotics?" And this is like basically the problem with the whole story, because why do they need to know Khalil's past? Because the only reason they should be asking that is if they would like to charge him, but there's no point because he died. So it's not even relevant to the incident because it was mentioned that he had nothing on him, because Star was aware of that. So they're just trying to justify the officer, basically.
Which they did.
Yeah. His drug deals are like probably gonna be the only thing exposed to the media in order to justify the officer's actions. Yet the officer had no reason to pull over Khalil in the first place. Star admitted that he wasn't recklessly driving, he wasn't speeding, he wasn't doing any of that. So the officer clearly just pulled him over because he was a black guy leaving a party.
Well, the officer said he claimed that it was because of a broken taillight,
But
but I'm sure, like, it's possible that he had a broken taillight, but even if he did, I don't think he would have pulled over a white person with a broken taillight. I feel like he probably would have been like, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
Or like at least like told them, like drove beside them, and like,
And-
hey, like,
yeah.
your taillight's broken. Just like, by the way.
And Khalil's gonna be like portrayed as just a drug dealer, but the reason behind it will never be mentioned, which is likely he was trying to provide sustainability for his family.
Yeah, and like
So basically-
the news thing too is like known drug dealer like gets killed and
Yeah.
shot. Like,
I mean, the fact that like the officer said he thought he had a gun and it was a hairbrush, and then
Hairbrush.
Star was like, he got killed over a fucking hairbrush.
Yeah.
And it was just kind of like, wow, that's.
It's
really
like
deep.
basically the officers are gonna be justified, but Khalil won't be
yeah.
because they're trying to give him reasons, like to prove that there was a motive.
Exactly.
And even then, like at Star's school, it spread to her school that a drug dealer was killed in the neighborhood, and they didn't even know his name. They're just like a drug dealer. They're like,
Yeah.
his name was Khalil, but is it the one we know? Like, do you know him, Star? Like, are you friends with the drug dealer? Like,
And then, like at Williamson too, like they all like started like a walkout because of that, but they didn't even know who he was. They just
Yeah.
wanted to get out of class.
so they're doing it for all the wrong reasons,
Yeah.
and they still like, I guess they're just like pretty ignorant to the fact that he was like a person, and yeah, okay, he dealt drugs, but he didn't have any with him, and you know, innocent until proven guilty. So
And like he wasn't like Star didn't even say that he had drugs or that she knew that he dealt drugs. They just like kind of like put words in her mouth.
Yeah.
And like in the interview, she said that like in her mind she was talking about how like she has to say what she saw and not what they think that she saw.
Yeah, don't let them put words in.
they were like practically harassing her at the station because they were asking like, oh, did he do drugs? Did he ever admit that he did them? Like they were asking all these questions, and she started talking back, saying like, why do you need to know this? And they don't need to know it. Like it's irrelevant. Like he's not dealing them anymore because one of your officers killed him. So
I also feel that like, did they suspect him before the cop pulled him over? And we're like, we think this guy might be dealing drugs. And then the cops saw him and went, that's the guy they think might be dealing drugs, and pulled him over. Or did they decide to suspect him afterwards to make up an excuse?
it was definitely
Because they
afterwards
offered.
because there's a lot of drug dealers out everywhere. They won't know who's who. Like exactly, like they didn't pull him over because they thought he had drugs, because he wasn't. Even if it was a light that was broken, he wasn't driving recklessly to prove that he was under an influence of drugs or anything. So clearly it was just trying to justify the officer's actions. So it's really dumb. Because if you think of it, obviously he had no reason to shoot him at all. Like literally nothing. Okay, we can go.
Okay, so on page 179, it's basically Maverick has taken in Devante so that he could hide from King, since he wants to like leave the drug dealing business. and he is now telling his wife about Devante living with them. And I predict that Maverick helping Devante will fire back at his family, and it'll cause more harm than good. King can easily send his men to search for Devante, which will mean a lot of trouble for the Carter family if he is found. And yeah.
I think it's totally fair that the mom was like pretty upset with him that for bringing Devante into her house.
Especially,
'cause-
yeah.
Yeah.
Especially Maverick used to be in the drug dealing business, and he also quit, so that can start something up again.
Yeah.
They can blackmail him too.
So, my other one is, like, when they were at the funeral and King showed up and, like, put the bandana on him and then, like, Miss Rosalie, like, threw it, I think, like, that was a really good reaction, but, like, I feel like he shouldn't have done that in the first place because it was kind of, like, disrespecting him in a way, like, because he did want to get out of, like, dealing drugs and, like, all that, and for him to do that, like, it was very rude and, like, very disrespectful.
Yeah, like I noticed a pattern in this book where it was like everyone wasn't impressed with anyone else's reactions. Like when at first like it makes it seem like Khalil's mom is dead, which we know she's not.
Yeah.
And Star gets all angry because she's crying and saying that her baby died, and then Star is like, you were never there for him, and now that he's gone, you're gonna pretend like you cared about him. But like obviously he was still her son, and she was trying to get better for Khalil. But it just seemed like throughout the entire book, like people were almost turning on each other because they weren't impressed with how people were reacting towards it.
That's a really interesting observation because it's sort of like, I think, you see the difference between maturity and experience and how people react to things, because I think it's natural for Star and for the other younger people to kind of make it about themselves, because like that's the stage of development you guys are at, right? Like when people say, oh, teenagers are selfish, it's like, no. Like that is where your brain's at right now. It's like you're thinking about your place in the world and how everything affects you, and you're not really like psychologically, you haven't really developed the ability yet to go, oh, wait a minute though, how might it affect the mom, right? Like you're not, and so it's natural for Star's reaction to be that. It's like, oh, well, she wasn't a good mom anyway, right? Mm-hmm. I thought it was really interesting the way that the mom responded to that, right? Because you could see that they're all kind of annoyed with her, and that she's been not the mom. I mean, is it Khalil's mom, right? Yeah. But as a mom sort of trying to put herself in the position of another mom, it's affecting her on a completely different level, right?
And I think she honestly kind of understands it because she almost couldn't care for her child too, because she was so young and her mother kicked her out.
Yeah.
And because Miss Rosalie, I think that was her, and she helped her.
Yeah.
I feel like without Miss Rosalie, she felt like she might be in the same sort of situation as the mom, so she feels a personal connection to her.
And I think the other thing that points out is that it's very easy for outsiders to make assumptions about bad parents. It's like, oh, well, obviously it's the parents' fault. The parents just need to do better. Why are the parents being better parents? It's like, that's ignoring this whole kind of, it's similar to what happens in Absolutely True Diary of a Part-Time Indian. That ignores sort of the intergenerational trauma and the cycle of poverty and everything else that the other characters in the story are dealing with, right? It's not fair to sort of judge them using the same standards as people coming from a position of privilege have, right?
It's just like everyone grieves differently. Like,
well, that too.
Like Star's, like I feel like Star's parents seem like pretty, like obviously they're trying not to set a tone for Star. Like they're trying to seem very put together, and they haven't we haven't really seen them fully grieve yet.
No.
Star was upset, but she definitely has PTSD because of something that happened in school when like her boyfriend seemed to be triggering a lot of PTSD for her.
Mm-hmm. Especially since she's watched like the two of her best friends die, not just the one, like the other one. And mentioning that like she used to burst out in tears all the time when Natasha died, I'm actually quite proud of Star. I know she's a fictional character, but for her to not burst out in tears all the time because of Khalil.
Yeah.
Because like that would be really difficult not to do.
It's probably really annoying because like no one's understanding what
Yeah.
Star's going through because she hasn't told any of her friends.
Yeah.
And at one point they're like, oh, that one drug dealer was shot in your neighborhood, and that's what she's been trying to avoid. Like, because Khalil was a lot more than a drug dealer.
Yeah.
It's like that one story we talked about, like the TED Talk.
Mm-hmm.
She can't like defend Khalil because
She doesn't want people to know
She
that
doesn't
she's
want to
there.
like not be associated with him. But like she even says that like, oh, I wasn't friends with him. Or like,
Yeah.
oh, I like don't know him, and she felt like she was like stabbing him in the back.
Exactly.
Because she doesn't want to be portrayed as what,
Well,
as
have you-
wrongfully as Khalil's being portrayed.
Yeah, and have you gotten to the part yet where she talks about having to control her anger because of the stereotype of like the angry black girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was really interesting too because it's sort of like she's talking about how she can't react with anger because if a white girl reacts with anger, it's like, oh, she's angry. But if a black girl reacts with anger, she becomes the angry black woman stereotype,
Yeah.
which is
They're almost like proud of when like white women like stand up for themselves.
yeah.
And,
But if a
like,
black woman does it, she's like she's
Yeah.
being a troublemaker.
That's
yeah,
like with Serena Williams.
that's exactly
Not
it.
only was she's a woman, she was also a person of color, and she got so much crap
Yes.
for like talking back to a ref, which made
Yeah.
no sense because people have done so much worse than she has, but
Yeah.
she got so much heat for it.
Yeah, that's exact, and that's like a perfect example of sort of when you talk about intersectional feminism. So it's not just that, like, yes, that was a feminist issue, Serena Williams being called out for her behavior, but it was more than that because it was specifically about her as a black woman and what kind of standard she's being held to and how. That stereotype of the angry black woman. It's like, oh, here she goes. Here's the angry black woman. It's like, well, wait a minute. Let's look at why she's angry in the first place. She has a right to be angry. She's allowed. Like, you're allowed to have feelings, right?
But like if it was a black man, that'd be like different. You would almost be like threatened.
Yes.
But like they're not threatened by a black woman.
Yes.
They just think that she's crazy. But like
Yeah.
if a black man did it, that
Yeah.
would be like.
And you do see a version of that too when people talk about, oh, my ex-girlfriend, she's crazy. My ex-girlfriend's crazy. It's like, is she really crazy,
Or
or
are
did
you
you
just
were you just like
calling
really
all of
awful to
them?
her and she's upset about it?
Yeah.
You know? And like when we say things like this, like we're like, oh, she's crazy or he's this. What we're doing is we're undermining their real feelings and their right to have and express those feelings, right? Like we're delegitimizing those emotions
And also their credibility. 'cause,
and their
like,
credibility.
If
Yeah.
the one guy is telling everybody and everybody else believes him, when she says what really happened, they're gonna be like, sorry, I don't believe you.
Yeah. Very good, guys.
I also really liked how when it was like, the only thing worse than being the angry black girl is being the weak black girl.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just kind of sad because it sucks that she can't show her emotions because she's hiding everything. But also, like, I can totally understand that because, like, I hate being weak in public, like, crying. I'm like, no. When I'm alone, oh yeah, it's just waterfalls. But, like, when you're in public, you kind of, like, don't want to let that show because you don't want people to know that you have these emotions when really it's just, like, everybody has them. But when I feel like because she's black, she thinks that people are gonna assume stuff. I don't know. But
Well, because it's sort of like if you look at how people are portrayed in the media, and I think that's sort of the thing that she's talking about. She's identifying that a lot of black women are either depicted as victims or, you know, crazy angry ladies, right? And so it's like if you don't actually think of people as real human beings, then you only think of them in terms of how they conform to the stereotypes that you've seen in the media, then she doesn't have a choice. She's either this or she's that, right? And it's like she doesn't want to be either of those two things. She just wants to be Star, right? Yeah.
The biggest problem with it is that just like over time, we've developed these double standards when it comes to stereotypes. Like,
Yep.
if you think of white people don't have a poor stereotype,
No.
but when it comes to the Middle East, you know,
Yep.
they're causing terror. Black people are causing terror.
Yeah.
Hispanics are causing terror.
Yeah.
And that's why there's so many problems.
And it's, again, it goes back to the danger of a single story video. It's that if you only see, you know, stereotypical presentations of people, then that's how you view them, right? Whereas if you are part of the dominant culture, which white people are in North America, they get to decide how they are presented, right? It's like we have like really complex representations of white people in the media because we have so many of them. But when we have like just a single story or a very limited number of stories about different types of people, then there's no complexity there. They get reduced to stereotypes, right, or caricatures.
It's like over time, like I feel like white people have like lost their power that they had over them. Like, you know, we had slavery and all this stuff. And now because, you know, obviously it's kind of like it's getting to be more an equal balance. People who are thriving, they're probably like some people who are still stuck in the past are getting annoyed.
Yeah.
And they still want to find ways to have power.
That connects really well to the video that the To Kill a Mockingbird people are going to watch, because you guys can watch it too, because I mean you have access to all of the documents, but talking about the use of the N-word and why that is a part of power and privilege, right? And so how, like, sort of that connection you were just bringing up about. So the guy in the video has this part where he talks about, he's like, I think I get why white people don't like it when they're told that they can't use that word. It's like, because you invented that word. It was your word, right? And now you're being told you can't use that word you invented. And it's that connection to power, right? So, okay. But and I think that's the Mockingbird. Like I said, it's the Mockingbird Group's video, but I think you guys would get a lot out of it too.
With the stereotype thing, I totally agree with like that like white people don't have very many stereotypes, but there is one that I've noticed recently is that all like people like white men from Texas or like rednecky, they're all racist.
Yeah.
Yes.
But they're not, because
Yeah.
I actually saw this thing. I was watching The Daily Show,
Yeah.
or maybe it was The Late Show. I don't know. It was one of them, and it was talking about voting for the midterms. And they were all like, "Oh, we don't want to vote. We definitely aren't going to vote for this black woman who is incredibly like she's
Yes,
good and
yes.
she's got all the
Yes,
qualifications."
I know
And they're
exactly
like,
who you're talking
we
about.
don't want to vote for her. And then one of them was like, "Oh, I love her. She's great. Totally going to vote for her. I think she's amazing."
Yeah.
And it was like kind of like, wow, they're not all
Yes.
the same. They have different.
And we are seeing that a lot right now in the
perspectives.
media. So like midterm elections in the States are tomorrow. You were seeing a lot of polarization politically in the States. And so it does sort of, you do start seeing the stereotype about the Republicans versus Democrats. It's a little bit different, but you are seeing people reduced to those kinds of stereotypes. Okay, I want you guys to switch. You can stop the recording now, but I want you guys to switch to the